We are living in a rapidly changing world, and the climate and biodiversity crises are becoming more pronounced every day. Solutions are rarely simple, and there are limits to what we as humans can accomplish by relying on technologies alone. There is a growing consensus that we need to rely more on sustainable solutions that are in synergy with nature. Communities around the world have a long tradition of sustainability coexisting with nature to secure their lives and livelihoods, and we need to harness this knowledge. Although nature-based solutions have been supporting humanity for thousands of years, framing this concept now brings a wealth of new opportunities for future endeavors. Nature-based solutions are indispensable in nature-smart recovery and climate adaptation, as they improve livelihoods, building up community resilience to climate change, and reducing disaster risks. What makes nature-based solutions stand apart from other approaches is that they provide win-win solutions to simultaneously achieve social, economic, and environmental goals at scale. Food security, clean water, rich biodiversity, and carbon sequestration can all be achieved at once by harnessing, not harming, the healing power of nature. From protecting and managing forest landscapes, to restoring wetlands and coastal zones, to creating green islands in cities, nature-based solutions provide numerous benefits, including clean air and water, healthy soil and accessible food, biodiversity and ecosystem integrity, improved livelihoods and social cohesion. Nature can be a powerful ally in curbing the climate crisis. By employing nature-based solutions, community resilience can be significantly improved beyond the capacity to absorb and recover from a single disaster, such as flood or drought. Nature-based solutions are both an ancient and modern approach, evoking humans to become better stewards of their lands and ensuring the long-term prosperity of communities by maintaining equilibrium with nature.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, participants to the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction, I welcome you to our session on scaling nature-based solutions to climate. My name is Boris Serg. I'm director of IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and I will be hosting this event for you today. I have a great pleasure to welcoming a really distinguished and exquisite group of panelists that we are having today, which will be shedding lights and sharing their thoughts on nature-based solutions and how to scale nature-based solutions for climate. Before that, I will just give a few introductory words about the scope of today's event and set the stage for the discussion that will then follow with our panelists. IUCN has launched the global standard for nature-based solutions in 2020 as a response to a growing demand on framing discussions around nature-based solutions. And making our approaches to nature-based solutions coherent. The standard comes as a result of a years-long discussion and negotiation with a multitude of partners coming from a public, private sector, civil society organizations, research and academia. And it provides that big global framework for how to understand and how to roll out nature-based solutions. It sits on a set of criteria, and there is a number of underlying indicators which help us actually understand our and define our solutions, whether or not they they can be referred to as nature-based solutions. The standard is to provide a lot of co-benefits, and it is to address a number of societal and environmental challenges. And they range from climate change adaptation and mitigation to disaster risk reduction, which is the very focus of today's discussion, to providing economic and social benefits and opportunities for development, to human health, food security, water security, and last, certainly not least, for addressing environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. So nature-based solutions is also standard is also to provide biodiversity gains. The standard comes very timely as we've moved into the decade on ecosystem restoration, and this standard is actually one important element, one important piece in this big puzzle on how we turn the tide actually, and how we improve the status of the state of nature that we know that's been heavily degraded over the past decades. And of course, there is a lot of traction with the nature-based solution standard, and now we are making every effort to scale it up. And today's discussion is also part of that effort. We've seen the emergence of a number of multilateral and public-private innovative funding mechanisms, including, for example, the subnational climate finance funded through the Green Climate Fund. Then the global EBA fund, for example, that is granting, supporting numerous projects around the globe to address various types of issues by applying ecosystem-based adaptation approach, and Nature Plus Accelerator Fund. So there is a lot of development in terms of mobilizing resources in scaling nature-based solutions and making new investments in nature-based solutions. And now probably the question is how that investment is being managed, actually, how that investment is being governed. So one of the key elements of this of nature-based solutions, a big picture for IUCN is to provide after the standard has been launched, of course, to provide a good governance and to make sure that the standard has been properly understood, applied, and mainstreamed. To that end, one of the directions we work on is to set up a certification process through which then private partners, other partners, interested partners could be certified on nature-based solutions and make sure that the application of the standard is proper. We work with a number of credible agencies and organizations who are involved in e-certification and issues around it, and we hope that the certification process will be launched in 2022. So these are just a few information on where we are with the nature-based solution standard today. And certainly one of the highlights when it comes to nature-based solution standard and its implementation is the ADAPT initiative in the Western Balkans, which is also how we frame this discussion, and our distinguished panelists are part of this endeavor, where we are trying to roll out nature-based solutions across the region at different levels, including policy development, knowledge capacity development, and application on the ground, which I'm very proud of. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were also part of a panel discussion presentation at COP26, where we presented a recent progress with our pilot site, nature-based solution pilot site in Serbia. And I'm very pleased that some of the panelists today can say more about it. With this, I'll move on to the next the core part of the session today, where we are having four panelists who will be sharing their thoughts with us. So we have Tita Lassila from SIDA, a Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. We have Antoine Avignon, program manager at the EU delegation in Serbia. We have Dominique Otberg from the French Development Agency Western Balkans office based in Belgrade, and we have Deputy Director of the Public Investment Management Office of the government of the Republic of Serbia, Sandra Nedjeljković. So welcome and thanks a lot for accepting this invite to be part of the panel today. I will start with Tita, and first to introduce Tita more properly. So Tita Lassila, who is a program specialist at the Environment and Climate Change at the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA. Tita comes with more than a decade's experience from working with environment and development sectors, and particularly nature and forest protection, sustainable development, and environmental issues and climate justice as well. Before joining SIDA, Tita worked in the civil society sector on both environment and human rights. Now, Tita coordinates the operationalization of SIDA's work on environment at the Department for Europe and Latin America. So welcome, Tita, to the panel discussion today. And we can start off with SIDA. Just recently, SIDA it published its new strategy for the Western Balkans, which pretty much centers on environment and climate. So you can just shed some light on what are the priorities for SIDA in the upcoming period, and basically why you think and why you've so strongly and put emphasis on environment and climate over the next period.
Thank you so much, Boris. I'm hoping that you can all hear me.
Yep.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel discussion, and it is indeed my great pleasure to take part today. So I'd like to start by shortly presenting SIDA's approach to development cooperation before going into our strategic priorities in the Western Balkans. Since for SIDA, the Agenda 2030 and the principle of leave no one behind are central starting points, and our main target group are people experiencing poverty and oppression. Viable ecosystems and a stable climate are, of course, the basis for all human life and a prerequisite for eradicating poverty. Based on our main development tool, the multidimensional poverty analysis, we adapt our development support and integrate poor people's perspectives, the rights-based approach, and the three thematic perspectives: conflict, gender equality, as well as environment and climate in everything we do. And particular focus is given to the societies and the people affected by armed conflicts or climate-induced disasters in effort to strengthen the interaction between humanitarian aid, development cooperation, and peace building, the so-called triple nexus. And all of us development actors need to adopt a holistic systems approach in order to support the resilience building of vulnerable communities and address the underlying causes of crisis and conflict. We need to embrace and advance what the youth movement has been calling for: intergenerational equity and environmental and climate justice. The goal for SIDA's partnership in the Western Balkans is to create stronger conditions for a democratic, sustainable, and inclusive development. And Sweden's development assistance should contribute to countries' EU rapprochement and complement EU's activities in the region. SIDA's support shall contribute to building and strengthening a transparent, accountable, independent, and more efficient public administration on both national and local level. We support efforts to combat corruption, including in the environmental and natural resources sector. SIDA will also continue to put emphasis on supporting an active civil society. In terms of environment and climate in specific, Sweden's and thus SIDA's strategic priorities are reduced environmental and climate impact, as well as sustainable management and use of natural resources, and increased resilience against the impacts of climate change and strengthen conditions for preservation and restoration of biological diversity and ecosystems. We support a broader green transition through investments in decarbonization, biodiversity conservation, and transition to a circular economy. Support may also in the new strategy be directed to sustainable agriculture and to improving municipal services in water supply, sanitation, energy efficiency, and waste and chemical management, which actually have been a strong focus in the past. SIDA supports environmental work both bilaterally and regionally. Important prerequisites for regional partnerships are complementarity and efficiency, that there is a clear added value in working regionally instead of bilaterally. Due to the transnational nature of many environmental problems, such as climate change or air pollution, it often makes sense to partner on a regional level, but it also places quite a lot of demands on program design and implementation in terms of coordination, communication, and local ownership. SIDA relies on dialogue and strategic partnerships to advance the green agenda for the Western Balkans and the fulfillment of Chapter 27 requirements in the EU accession. In order to achieve lasting results for people where it counts, we encourage and seek to support local partnerships, as well as meaningful participation and agency of vulnerable and marginalized groups, such as children, youth, and ethnic minorities. Since the climate and environmental crisis is a systemic crisis that requires a complete societal transformation, we should find agile ways to collaborate between actors and sectors. Therefore, we need cooperation between the economic, human rights, and conservation community. We need to see more innovative initiatives and projects to advance a rapid yet just transition to a green economy through a multitude of financial instruments. And we need to strengthen the voices of the most vulnerable by investing in education and economic and political empowerment. In terms of conservation, climate resilience, and nature-based solutions, we need to make sure that we go beyond these high-end discussions and think of what actually works in each specific context and what brings the greatest benefits, as the ADAPT program is now doing. And evidence and best practices is what we need. I envision the conservation community joining forces with other actors, including academia, to work on concrete nature-based solutions such as locally led agroforestry, agroecology, restoration of waterways and watersheds, green skills development for youth who desperately need better reasons to stay and develop their own countries and communities, or green infrastructure in urban areas. There is so much we all can learn from each other while embarking in this sprint towards systemic change. Thank you.
Thank you, Tita, thank you very much for such an inspiring intervention. Thanks a lot to, of course, to SIDA for championing new approaches and nature-based solutions in particular. And thanks for understanding realizing the importance of supporting nature-based solutions in the region, and in particular insisting on having them translated into action on the ground. We will have some time to discuss on that today. And we at IUCN we are fully aware that all these standards, they have to be transferred into action on the ground, and then communities who live on the ground they can see real benefits of the standards, knowledge, and methodologies and tools that we are proposing. We will get back to that. Thanks a lot once again. And now moving on to Antoine Avignon. Antoine Avignon was like 2 decades of international experience. Even from childhood, from his early days in the Alps, where he fell in love with nature, and then moving in 2003 to the EU office in Africa, where he worked on a large portfolio of projects on infrastructure, water supply, and including wildlife conservation. And then finally in 2009 moved to Albania, working for the EU delegation on EU accession in particular, and Chapter 27 with a focus on environment and climate. He was instrumental in launching a series of of important projects for the country, and including on Natura 2000 and other projects that helped align a national legal framework with the EU acquis. In 2013, he co-founded the first environmental film festival in Albania in support of environmental awareness and young filmmakers. After serving in Tirana, he moved to Belgrade, and since 2017 he's based in Belgrade, and working at the European Union delegation in Serbia, and being in charge of the environment and climate action portfolio. So Antoine's activities cover policy dialogue, programming investments, participation to donor coordination, and lately he worked also on kickstarting the green agenda for the Western Balkans in Serbia. So Antoine, in terms of a person working for the EU delegation, what are your views on the linkages between biodiversity, climate adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction? How those have been addressed by the European Commission and its portfolio in Serbia?
Thank you, Boris. And wow, I did all this already? No, but more to come. Thanks for this introduction. Well, and thanks for the invitation, and hi again to all the participants. Well, you know, there is since 2 years now, the EU has stepped up considerably its policy and its willingness to act towards better environmental protection and climate action. This has been enshrined into the Green Deal, which is a new policy development new development policy of the EU. And this has been translated, let's say, into the Green Agenda for Western Balkan. So as you know, there are 5 pillars in this Green Agenda: decarbonization, fight against pollution, biodiversity, rural and agro, and circular economy. So within the Green Deal and within the Green Agenda, biodiversity is there. And biodiversity is of course very important for us as a species, for our economy and for well-being, and protecting it is enough detailed in scientific reports, and there's no need to come back on this. But where the EU, let's say, in the Western Balkans is, and in particularly this delegation, but not only in other countries of the Western Balkans, they're also rolling out the Western Balkans Green Agenda. What is very important is solution exists, nature-based solutions exist. It is clear that it is linked with climate action, with protection of soil, protection of forests, and the fight against soil erosion. The willingness to act is there from the EU. Some instruments are being put in place, and when it comes to disaster risk reduction, of course, we want to work with nature and not against nature. So I think the nature-based solution is really a principle of our action, and it is of course translated into EU policies and strategies. The question, because this week has been a lot of discussion around the COP26, the question is, if there is willingness, political willingness, if there is finance, if there are funds available, what are we missing to kickstart and to move ahead stronger and faster? Because there is no time to lose. So we know that the Western Balkans will be impacted even more severely because of climate change, of global warming. We have seen, unfortunately, floods and droughts around the region. We know the impact on negative impact on citizens, on families, and it is extremely important to start adaptation and mitigation measures as soon as possible. So I would say that having the legal framework, having the policies in place, the next step is really how to move forward to concrete actions on the ground. I would like to give one example. We just launched a pilot project or program on pre-accession funds. We're about to sign a pilot action program with partners such as UNDP, Sweden, and the European Investment Bank. We have seed relatively quite good amount of money, 80 million euro, in order to make some calls for proposals for actions based on the 5 pillars of the green agenda, which actions we would like to afterwards scale up, because we believe that we cannot do everything alone. The EU, the government in silo, it doesn't work. So we really want to have a platform for the green agenda in the Western Balkans and in Serbia in particular, where we can define actions, start them with some seed money, and then if it works, these pilot actions are successful, then we will be able to scale them up. Of course, all this in the frame of supporting Serbian citizens for access to better air, to better water, and to better conditions of life. And of course, in the frame of EU accession. So with this, we'd like to really experiment and try, let's say, this pilot action and see what are the actions we can take locally, respecting inclusiveness, respecting empowering the local communities in designing and implementing of these actions. We will try our best to communicate this in advance. You know that sometimes it comes a little bit at the end of everything because we are entangled with many things. But we do believe that nature-based solution, in one word, can really yield a lot of benefits that goes much beyond the lifespan of a project. And this is one of the main objectives we have in Serbia and in the Western Balkans in general. We need time to design, implement those projects, but once we have this started, I hope we can all work together on this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Antoine. It's really exciting to see this progress and recent developments in Serbia, and also knowing that there are some funds available for implementing the green agenda for the Western Balkans. That is a new approach, and we see that something from which many partners in the region can benefit. So thanks for these insights. So it's very exciting, and now I'm turning to Dominique. And Dominique is director at the Western Balkans Regional Office of the French Development Agency, AFD. Dominique is a graduate in civil engineering and international project management, and professional with 30 years experience in urban and infrastructure projects. Prior to joining the French Development Agency in 2001, he managed environmental consultancy firms in Brazil and France. Dominique started his career at AFD as task team leader on infrastructure projects in Northern Africa and Maghreb region. He then joined AFD's office in New Caledonia as deputy director, and then led the urban development practice with AFD's University in Marseille. In 2017, he was appointed at headquarters to develop AFD's activities in the Western Balkans, and subsequently as director of the newly established Belgrade-based AFD's Western Balkans office in December 2019. So welcome, Dominique, to this panel. I can say with great pleasure, because we are seeing AFD very strongly stepping in and very strongly being committed in supporting countries in the region on advancing various environmental priorities and also supporting the nature-based solution standard. Speaking of which, the French Development Agency is one of the key supporters and funders of the global standard of nature-based solutions. So we are very grateful to you for that support. You were helping us pioneer the standard, and now the standard has been launched. So as a representative of an international development organization, and a question would be, to which extent you are now integrating the principles of the nature-based solutions standard in designing your strategies, in designing your programs, and designing your projects, in particular focusing on projects that are to address disaster risk reduction or biodiversity crisis. So to which extent the standard help you actually develop your approach?
Thank you, Boris, for your introduction. I will try to give you some element about how does we work, we integrate this nature-based solution in our activity. So first of all, allow me to highlight the strong partnership established between AFD and IUCN since 2009. We are very proud of this long-standing cooperation, through which AFD mobilized technical and financial support for the elaboration of NBS global standards. This was a real collective intelligence effort, and we hope it will further contribute to establish synergy and further operational cooperation between IFIs and the conservation community worldwide. As AFD, we committed to double our financing efforts for biodiversity and nature protection by 2025. This means bringing €1 billion in yearly contribution to France's international effort for biodiversity. We see the nature-based solution global standard as a high potential tool towards materializing this engagement. Precisely, it contributes to our reflection to systematize a more reliable and more robust accounting and reporting of the group's biodiversity finance with our partners and also with our clients, and to optimize the synergy between climate and biodiversity co-benefits across all our portfolio in Western Balkan, but of course all over the world. Even so, AFD was involved in the development of the standards. I would also like to emphasize that we are only at the starting point of this NBS journey in terms of internal knowledge, practical mobilization, and mainstreaming this approach in our operation. However, as we can see from a recent cooperation we had with IUCN colleagues in South Asia, we are somehow already applying the NBS approach in some of our interventions without labeling this intervention as such. As part of this cooperation, IUCN experts screened our project portfolio in the region to identify the projects wholly or partly complying with NBS criteria, and found a number of examples. I would share one example in Vietnam, where AFD supports the Cao Mau Coastal Erosion project through a €20 million loan. Cao Mau province is highly exposed to climate risk, notably typhoons, and this financing precisely aims to improve the adaptation capacity of the province in face of natural disaster and climate change, and also to contribute to the sustainable economic development of the province. IUCN experts assessed AFD that all components of this project precisely respond to the 8 criteria established by the global standards. A part of this cooperation, IUCN teams trained our staff to mobilize the standards in the design of our intervention, and we would like to do it the same in Balkan also. This training allowed IFT teams to conduct NBS assessment to guide the thinking and planning for future projects and to develop integrated approach compatible with global standards. For example, for eco-ports conception in Indonesia, or for the design of wastewater treatment plant in Pakistan. In Balkan, it will come, but as you know, we are very new here and we are trying to develop it. AFD is also engaged in structuring and mobilizing new tools to strengthen public policy dialogue regarding NBS and disaster risk reduction. Under that line of work, we have developed what we call standby credit to help government secure funds in anticipation of future risk events associated with medium to high likelihood of materialization. I mean, seism are contemplated, but also flood, forest fire, and so on. Standby credits are backed with a roadmap of policy reforms and measures that government agree to undertake in connection with disaster risk reduction, civil protection, and climate change adaptation. We have applied this approach recently in Tunisia and in Madagascar in partnership with World Bank, who developed the same tool. And we contemplate mobilizing this new tool in the Western Balkans as well, subject to our partners' request. And to conclude, AFD is, as you can see, strongly engaged to contribute to this positive dynamic, aiming to diffuse knowledge on NBS global standards that is meant to serve as a common language for all development partners in connection with the biodiversity and overall sustainable development goals agenda. We will invest in the operationalization of this global standard, and we will keep exploring with our partners opportunity to further inclusion and systematization of the NBS in all our action. And we hope that we will be able to develop this approach soon in Western Balkan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique, a lot. Thanks for your long-standing support to promoting nature-based solutions standard, and it's really very exciting to see that there is a lot in the making in the Western Balkans. We've seen already a few important projects supported by the French Development Agency, and we do hope that that you will continue helping partners in the region bring the standard forward. Now I'm turning to Sandra and Sandra Nedeljković, Deputy Director of the Public Investment Management Office of the government of the Republic of Serbia. Sandra holds a degree at the University of Belgrade in political science, and where she graduated from international relations and diplomacy, and she also holds an MA in public administration, local self-government, and public policy. She's now undertaking her PhD studies in the field of disaster risk management and fire safety. After spending a few years in the field of journalism, marketing, PR, and working with the private sector, she entered the public administration and started working for the government of Serbia in the area of local self-government and decentralization. After the devastating floods in 2014 in Serbia, the government decided to open a reconstruction and recovery office which Sandra joined at the time. The office now, in the meantime, turned into the Public Investment Management Office, where Sandra is Deputy Director today. Sandra has been in the resilience, recovery and reconstruction process from the very beginning. Had the opportunity to be involved in upgrading and reforming disaster risk management system in Serbia, with particular focus on risk reduction. Now that she is responsible for the implementation of the National Disaster Risk Management Program in Serbia, she's focusing her professional interest in assuring resilience, risk reduction, and climate change adaptation, and mainstreaming it across all sector. So it's vast experience, Sandra. And with that, I really want to ask you at PIMO, the Public Investment Management Office, and you've supported really countless projects and partners and local communities in coping with or recovering from disasters since 2014. How you see the role of nature-based solutions as an approach to disaster risk reduction in Serbia, and to which extent it has been recognized or integrated into policies, planning, or action on the ground?
Hello to everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this panel. Me personally and the team of PIMO that is dealing with all these projects related to resilience, to investment, usually mostly in a local level, working together with the municipalities and cities throughout the Serbia, are very eager to this part of the work dealing with the nature. We are very eager to nature. We really like it very much, and we really enjoyed working with IUCN in this ADAPT project. Unfortunately, until now, maybe you are all aware that Serbia, when it was part of Yugoslavia, we had a lot of natural-based solutions implemented at that time. So before 1990s, Serbia had, when dealing with agriculture, with the landslide, with the various hazards, a natural-based solution were a priority at that time in the policy. Somehow during this democratic transition, unfortunately, prevention, as it is, not only the natural-based solution, but prevention somehow was a bit neglected because of this whole democratic transition. But 2014 somehow was a trigger for Serbia to, wake up and to start to think differently. Also, in Yugoslavia, we had very good civil protection system put in place. A lot of Western democracy studied Yugoslavian civil protection system and made their own system based of ours. But unfortunately, Serbia somehow neglected it. But today we had a great exercise. It was led by the Ministry of Interior and 50 local self-governments. It was called System 2021, where they have a huge exercise in Serbia showing how national and local bodies and institutions needs to work together, coordinate when something happens, when disaster happens. Also, we like to joke a little bit where there is natural, where nothing is natural in the natural disasters, because when disaster happens somewhere in the nature, somehow nature get along with all this. But the natural disaster that happens here, it's urban disasters, and it's mostly man-made. When we don't live in line with nature, when something happens, we don't know how to act, and a huge disaster is happening with the huge damages. And that is something that happened with us in 2014 when we had severe floods. It was 100-year flooding, and due to the PDNA, the damage that was assessed was up to $1.7 billion. So it was less than 5% of the Serbian GDP. So the nature can show us that we can suffer a lot if we are not in line with the nature. Being in the recovery process, the office put disaster risk reduction at the first place, building back better, 3Bs to implement, to put the risk information within the project design, and to reconstruct everything to be resilient to the future disasters. Along with all these measures, we have started to think about the natural-based solution. And after 2017, I think that, Boris, you are aware of this, with FAO, we made some project design in Kraljevo about some torrential floods, torrential flooding, how can we avoid them at one place, and in another hand to take this water to use it as somehow retention for forest, for a possible forest fires. So we have started with this, and now we are revising the National Disaster Risk Management Program. We are in the process of developing National Disaster Risk Reduction Strategy based on the Sendai, and we have also the new climate change law, which says that all institutions needs to implement adaptation measures within their development programs. Especially local self-government and the provinces. So now we have the instruments to put all this knowledge that we got, to put a natural-based solutions, a climate change adaptation as a part of disaster risk reduction. I like to underline that disaster risk reduction is a broader policy than adaptation of climate change, because you are reducing some risks and some possible risks that would come from the hazards that are not made due to the climate, like earthquakes, like man-made hazards. DRR policy and adaptation policy needs to be in line, needs to work together, especially because a lot of measures, adaptation measures, are at the same time disaster risk reduction measures. So if we want to be resilient, if we want to prepare for the future disaster, we need now to start implementing those measures. It's not only the climate change is happening. I think Serbia is aware of this. In 2014, we had 100-year flooding. In 2016, 17, 18, 19, we also had some spots in Serbia where we recognize 100-year flooding. So it's not, we can face those floods every year. So we see that the climate is changing. That's why we need to implement all those measures. And somehow I see PIMO as a hub. Like Boris said, we have implemented a lot of projects, not only the recovery project, the investment in local resilient infrastructure, but also we are implementing several loans regarding energy efficiency, regarding now we are preparing documentation for the sewage and wastewater system. So with all this measure, we need to implement adaptation, measure the reuse of water and everything that would happen in future when the temperature is higher and where the climate and the weather is changed, is not like we used to. So now is the time to change, especially at local level, where, for example, in some parts of Serbia, we don't have sewage system put in place. So to have adaptation measures to collect rainwater and to reuse it for some purposes, now is the time to implement all these activities and intervention and to plan this. So disaster risk reduction strategy, the adaptation strategy needs to be in line with the urban planning. And DRR strategy and risk assessment and hazard assessment are just the baseline for the future urban planning. In that case, we can say that we can be resilient in the future if we put all those data in the planning process. I just want to thank the EU, the international partners, SIDA and France, for all the support. We are working very closely to all our international partners, and very thankful for all the support that you are giving Serbia. I can say strongly that the natural-based solution, the adaptation measures and DRR measures are very high on the policy level in Serbia, and we are working on it. So this is work in progress, and I think it never stops. So we cannot say that we have some other transition and to neglect this measure. This is something that is a part of the development process of one country, and we can never neglect this. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sandra, for this. We know how much work there is with PIMO and how much of investment there is on the ground. And you're very supportive of seeing results on the ground, yeah, which I second fully. So since we have colleagues coming from the international development sector, and also you who are managing a state budget, but also working with international project. Maybe just one general question, whoever wants to take it. We see this emergence of nature-based solutions, approaches that really look into nature and natural ecosystems as part of our solution. So not just recovering from disasters, as Sandra said, but also trying to prevent something by either managing nature in a more integrated and better way, or restoring nature where it's been degraded. So we are seeing the emergence of these approaches, and then alongside we are also seeing a growing kind of, a growing commitments from public and private alike on creating funds and different new mechanisms to invest in nature-based solutions. So what really needs to be in place now, as already mentioned today, what really needs to have in place in order to that commitment in terms of funding really reach communities on the ground and turn into a meaningful nature-based solution, or just activity on the ground that will help communities? So from the perspective of someone who is dealing with projects in local governments, or someone who is basically designing international development strategies and programs and projects. So what we really need to have in order to efficiently use these funds that are getting available for nature-based solutions on the ground. Yeah, Tita, please.
Thank you, Boris, and thank you everyone for very interesting ideas. I would not so much looking at it from a project perspective, but to say very quickly, one crucial thing I would say is policy coherence, which Sandra also touched upon. That when we look at, for example, the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans, and then we compare it to the Green Agenda, and when we look at all these other plans and policy developments on EU level, on all levels, they need to be coherent, and all investments to flood prevention and protection and other sectors should be nature-based. They should be tweaked in a way that they are also in alignment with global standards and nature-based solutions. So I think this is something where we still have quite a long way to go, I would say. I don't know what others would comment on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Dominique, please.
Yes, I just would like to explicit how we see NBS standards. We see it at 3 levels. The first one, NBS, we see it as a tool for a dialogue between all partners, and first of all, project manager, project owner, IFIs, and so on. So the dialogue can be strengthened by this tool. Secondly, we see it as mentioned before, a tool for analysis of the approaches. And it's a very, very interesting tool regarding its comprehensive approach. And third one, we think that NBS also is a tool for convergence to SDG. And perhaps it is the main, its main characteristic. It's a nexus between several approaches and several SDGs. So for us, what needs to be done, we don't know. We must be modest. We are learning by doing. But I think with all competencies and willingness of our partners, we will be able to implement NBS as a central tool at this 3 level of analysis, dialogue, and convergence with SDG. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dominique, for that. Yeah, I really I support your really bridging from global to national to local. We really have to enable that to happen, so that just not to stay with the realm of global standards or policies, global policies, but truly to translate that into meaningful action on the ground. I see Antoine's hand, so Antoine, please.
Yes, thank you, and I fully agree with the previous interventions. When we look at what is blocking, maybe because we know that cross nature-based solutions require cross institution work, cross competence works, putting universities together with the policymakers and implementers. What we miss maybe here still is to have better platforms, more open, where discussions can be done. I heard from, I think, Tilia, you mentioned it at the beginning in your intervention, to have the university and the academic together with us in this, because still, I think it's the approach in the countries in the region is a little bit too top down and a bit more by specialties. But it's not because you work on water that you cannot talk to the forest guys. It's not because you build a bridge that you cannot talk to those who are, I don't know, working on maybe recycling, because maybe you can use those. So whether we do, we will implement, the country will start projects of greening roofs, of repairing degraded lands, or river banks, and allowing creating flood plains or afforestation. It's really needed to make sure that every competence is put together, that there is connection between different type of university background or technicians, because we need all these skills to be together, and it's the total value of these skills and competences is higher than individually added. So this is what also Dominique rightly said about dialogue and about pushing through these solutions to make a better project. You know, we still struggle to design a road or a bridge integrating climate factors, integrating the change of waters, because in some state committees or in some institutions, it's not easy to understand that we need to foresee a 100-year flood, or it's not the habit to try to bring nature-based solution within the design of a big infrastructure. So we really know that from the design of a project, we can put NBS, and it's not just a tick the box exercise. It's really a fundamental shift of looking at the problem and trying to find a solution, because of course it's we know from the reports we read that it is even more efficient. And I really think, for example, for years when we have been putting barriers on the water for on the rivers, and now we see that we have to do the contrary. Basically, we have to allow the water to flow and plains where possible. Okay, and for example, I think especially for Serbia, if we apply this approach, if it's not possible everywhere, that studies can tell in detail, but the water always finds its way. So because countries are getting more and more urbanized, and there's more and more asphalt, which also we could try to revert, but we really need to find a way how to deal with water instead of pushing it away. And we can see in some cities that it is integrated into the urbanization, and that's a better solution for everyone.
Thanks a lot. And before we close, I just once again, Sandra, please, I mean, from someone who has so much practical experience.
I will be very brief. So I agree with all that you said. I will just add one thing. So it's terminology. You know, when we're speaking about environment, we need to put the protection of environment, and this is natural based. So we need to inline terminology into the activity, the intervention, into the actions, what we are really doing. Also, you know that a gender part of the projects in 1 decade is very, I cannot say popular, but it's an integral part of the project cycling. It can also, the natural-based solution could be. So we need to adjust this standard in every project, in every intervention that we want to do, to look after if this is possible, to implement. So knowledge, terminology is a crucial here. In this ADAPT project, Boris is managing this very well, and he is working in the one pilot city in Kraljevo together with the University of Forestry. So we need to have experts in this field. So we need to ask experts how to do it, and also dissemination of the data is very important, because you know the decision makers, they don't know how to do it. You can find in some municipalities they're lacking on capacities. Maybe they want to do it, but they don't know how. So this integration, this, like Tita said, coherence policies, I like it so much. Policy coherence, I like it really much. This is something that needs to lead to integral development. So if we want to develop, we need to look not to leave anyone behind, like SDG says, agenda, but not to leave other activities behind. So we need to put everything in the planning process. This is very crucial, to sit together. This is cross-cutting issue. We have several sectors. One sector is providing risk to another, has impact to another. So we need to think about the effects and impact of all the intervention that we are dealing with. So this needs to be a part of the planning process, which somehow, sometimes, you know, we are working very fast to get money, to get financial support, to implement, to get results, without thinking maybe we could do better. So this planning process needs to be somehow put in place better, to have all these experts working together in the planning process. And then implementation is really easy. When you plan well, it's, you know, 80% planning and 20% implementation, and you will receive your goals for sure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I cannot agree more. How important is actually, if nature-based solutions are to serve in preventing, in particular disasters, then they really have to be taken on board upfront, not just kind of, you know, retrofitting projects or activities in order to integrate. Tita, did you want to say something?
Yes.
I see your hand up.
Yes, please.
And then we can close. Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's just a very, very short final comment, and a bit related to the skills and knowledge gaps that we're still experiencing in NBS field. I think it's crucial, and I know that there's a component in the ADAPT program also on youth, but that we really consider the huge potential in nature-based solutions and youth green employment, green jobs for young people, for their engagement. So that would be a very, very key investment area to really educate young people on green economy, on nature-based solutions, on all these interlinkages between different sectors. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks, Tita, once again, not just reminding us, but really stressing how important what we are doing today actually is aimed at having a lasting impact into the future. So thanks for bringing the youth up. As you already mentioned, vulnerable groups and women and all stakeholders that are really heavily impacted by disasters, and that we need if we are to reduce their impact. With this, I would like to thank all the panelists. Really, it was a great pleasure. As always, it's never enough time. But I do hope that, and I'm very positive that we will have a more chance to continue with this interesting discussion. It's not just for the sake of being interesting, but it's also for the sake of really of planning and channeling and applying nature-based solutions to those who really need them most, and those are actually people who live on the ground. So once again, thanks a lot. Thanks for this really interesting discussion, and hope to see you soon again in some similar occasion. Thanks.